On this week's FAS TV, we're in Shetland to hear how Shetland livestock maintains its high animal health status, the protocols in place at the port, and their unique way of transporting livestock to and from the island.
Brian Smith from the south mainland of Shetland, and I'm a crofter / farmer. Yeah, I have around Viking sheepdogs, so I breed, train and sell sometimes sheepdogs. That's something that I've been doing for a very young age and really enjoy it. And we run probably about between 11 and 1200 ewes. Biggest percentage is Shetland ewes, but we have some of that Shetland ewes is run to the hill chief at Tups. And with the extra work and the extra sheep that we've got this last few years, then I'm struggling to find a lot of time for training dogs through the summer. So I have less dogs now, which is making things a lot easier for me now because you're just juggling stuff all the time. So I have one nursery dog this year, so and I'm happy with him. He's a fine fella. I used to have cross ewes. I had cross ewes home around for the winter. My management has changed a little bit because we got extra bit of ground island called Musa. It's off Shetland, which is a brilliant place for me to get. But we have my cross ewes is out there now. They're at the ram at the moment, and we have all ewe lambs will be home now for the winter, which is ideal for me because then I can train dogs. So when I would have had parks of pregnant sheep before, I knew I'm going to have this ewe lambs, and I'll be able to train dogs all through the winter. It's another thing that I can do for a bit of extra, and we will be feeding them. They'll get fed every day, the ewe lambs. So it'll be dogs and ewe lambs for now until lambing, and then we'll be back into the lambing work, and we'll be clipping again and tuning. It's just a big cycle. This is just in the shade. We just have this lambs. This is all ewe lambs that's in here, and we're learning them to eat. So they've been in for about 10 days now, and they're pretty much all learned. They'll be ready to go out again now in a couple of days. Yeah, well, we always we put them in the different pens, but it's important to grade them out so that they're not getting bullied. So we have 4 pens for the kind of bigger lambs over there. This is the smallest pen of cross lambs, and then we had 2 quite even pens there of Shetland lambs. The middle pen is the smallest pen of ewe lambs, and then right at the end is the biggest lambs over there. But it's really important to grade them out so they get a chance in at the feeding, because the bigger ones would push out the small ones. As we were saying, the smaller lambs here, this will just be like maybe Gimmers lambs or twins. So there's nothing wrong with them. They're a little bit smaller now, but they'll grow out to be good Gimmers, so you have to look after them. All the Shetland lambs, the pure Shetland lambs, is born just generation after generation, born in the hill. They look after themselves, which is really important characteristic for the Shetland sheep. And this lambs here, the cross lambs, is off the hill chief at ewes. I used the hill chief at now this last couple of years on the Shetland ewes. It's both hill breeds, and again very much look after themselves, and really happy with how they're clicking and working. So the human hand can do a bit of damage, I think, to livestock, and I think that you need to look at what kind of sheep you're working and what's the best characteristics. And I don't think we should be saving stuff that should maybe be saved at lambing time, stuff like that. I like the hill sheep looking after themselves, because I think that's survival of the fittest, I think, is a big thing. So for me, I very much like looking after the sheep, keeping them healthy, but I like them also doing their job, and as nature should provide it then. I also run the local dipping up here in Shetland. So that's run by the local mart up here, SLMG, and also it's hand in hand with the health scheme here in Shetland. Every single animal that comes into Shetland goes through the dipper. So we work hand in hand again then with the people at the pier and the local vets, and they come up on every sheep comes up in the cassette system. So they're tracked, every sheep is tracked, and then the vet checks every ewe, and they get a wormer drench as well down at the pier. And then from there they come up to us at the dipper, and we dip every animal that comes to Shetland. We're dipping to keep the sheep scab out of Shetland. They're cleaned out down at the pier with I think it's Zolvex, I think it's the name of the wormer that they give them in there. They also get a sidectin injection, which was the injection that was keeping Shetland safe up until now. But the sheep scab mite, the resistant mite now, if we get the resistant one, then that injection, the sidectin injection, doesn't kill them. So the dipper does. So it's very important that they come to the dipper. We inherited a really, really good health status, and I think we're here to look after it. That's how I seriously look at it. I think it's our responsibility to try and look after that health status, and I think that we could do a really good job marketing and selling our product after there. So it's very, very important. I think that if the past generations has looked after Shetland, then it's our responsibility to do the same, so that we can hand down to the next ones what we were given. There's a bylaw in now, so that now it's a legal requirement to dip your sheep when you come into Shetland. Up until this last 2 years, this is the third year of the dipper here in Shetland. In the last 2 years it's been voluntary. Last year we had 95% of the sheep that came to Shetland went through the dipper. So that showed great support, and it flags up there are little bits of problems, because it's not the easiest, because sometimes we're setting up the dipper for one sheep, you know, and it's very, very difficult logistically to organise it, for people to organise it in any other way. But so the dipperness, sometimes some people maybe thought it was expensive in the beginning, but it's because we have to pay for that whole swim bath for one animal, maybe sometimes, or two. There's nowhere really it has such a good chance as we do to keep sheep scab out, because we only have one port, so everything comes into one place. But down south it's coming from everywhere, and especially like the Western Isles and Orkney, most of that places might have 2 or 3 ports, and it's very, very difficult. But here we have this cassette system, where every single animal that comes to Shetland goes in the cassette system. They come here, they go through the vets down at the pier, and then they come up to us at the dipper. So we have a really, really good chance to monitor it properly, and we can keep the sheep scab out if we all work together. Well, the cost at the dipper is about £30 a head, which to me is very, very little in the big scheme of things. If you're taking a top forsooth, you're maybe spending £500–600, so an extra £30 is not much to take home a safe animal to your flock, because if you take home a dirty animal to your flock, it's going to cost you an awful lot more. So it's really, really essential that we keep sheep scab out of the hills in Shetland, because it is so hard to get the hills clean, completely clean. So we have to just work together and keep on it. I think people are understanding it now, and I think that it's all maybe about education and stuff, because to begin with people didn't understand why what we'd had in place didn't still work, but it's just education. Once they get to know, it's actually the mite that's changed. The mite is the clever one, and they're changed, and so we then have to adapt and change our system, because the thing that was keeping us safe before is no longer keeping us safe, and the resistant mite is everywhere. The resistant mite is very, very widespread now. So most of the places that the lambs come from on the mainland has, unfortunately, that resistant mite is there. So we really need this. I think that there's a need to bring in tops, definitely. There's a few breeders here, and there are a few really good breeders, but they're nowhere near the numbers that Shetland needs. There have been sheep that come to Shetland for hundreds of years. This is not a new thing that the tops come. Females is a different kettle of fish. It opens up a completely different can of worms, because sheep scab is one that we can deal with, a disease that we can deal with. But when you're taking in pregnant ewes, female ewes, then you could be taking in a lot of other stuff that would be really, really bad for Shetland. So I wouldn't do that anymore. I have done it in the past, but I did that before I really was thinking properly about it, and I didn't know really the damage that I could have been causing at that point. So for myself, I'd rather breed my own and retain the health status. For all that, to begin with, then some people thought it was a carry-on. It's really not a carry-on. It really works very well. This is very, very early days, so we are set up as been okay, but we're wanting to improve it. The things that we know that we can improve, and we're going to look into that, and we're going to be getting that done this winter to make it better, because now people has to come to us. So now that we know that that's going to be, we're going to have proper facility for them, but we're happy enough with it as it stands at the moment. I think the biggest percentage, well, I think last year's figure speaks for itself. 95% of people coming last year, when there were no bylaw, showed great support. And some of that ones that didn't come would have been pregnant ewes that was come up maybe this time of year for the Christmas Classic or whatever. But last year there were people came with pregnant ewes, and rather than them sliding into the dipper the usual way, I lifted them in and plotted them more, so that and then they went away and they lambed fine. So if people want to do that, then we will do that, and we'll take great care of them. What we try and do is, like, every animal is important to us, so we're trying not to hurt any animals going through there. But the dipper is made for the job, and it's worked fine for us. So, but no, I think really it's good support, and I think common sense. You kind of go. I mean, there would be no argument for. I cannot see any reason not to want to keep sheep scab out of Shetland.
My name is Hilary Burgess and I work for the Shetland Island Council. My role is veterinary advisor, so I would be involved with coordinating and planning with the Shetland Animal Health Schemes. Oh gosh, well, the Shetland Animal Health Scheme has been going for quite a few years now, and it's really unique in Scotland. And it has quite a few different functions. I mean, it's obviously helpful for the animals and for the crofters. It improves animal welfare and obviously farm efficiency and farm profitability. And along with that, you can also now look at it from the point of view of climate as well, and it's improving efficiency in farming, so it's beneficial for climate. And on top of that, now increasingly, the health schemes are giving the livestock in Shetland a really good reputation. So not only is it giving farmers a saving on their own farms and crofts, but also it's giving them a bit of a boost when they come to the marketplace. The Shetland Health Scheme can save people money on their own farm by increasing their efficiency of production, because they don't actually have some of the diseases that they might have otherwise. A good example of that would be sheep scab, which I think you've heard a little bit about already, the efforts we're going to control that. So perhaps if you're on the mainland, you might have to think about dipping your whole flock every year. And having all the production losses that go along with that. Whereas if you're in Shetland, you would only have to dip what's coming in, which may be just 1 ram a year. It might be 1 ram every couple of years. So that's a huge saving. Another big one would be the likes of enzootic abortion, which we keep control of in Shetland. Again, if your flock doesn't have it, you don't have to vaccinate it. That's a benefit. And also, obviously, at the moment, there's a big problem with availability of sheep vaccines, which is another issue, but we're less affected by for that reason. There's a few different diseases that we work with. On the sheep side, for the male animals coming in, we're looking at mydivisna and CLA. Those would be the diseases we test for. On the female side, we add enzootic abortion of ewes into the mix as well. And then we also do a drench for resistant worms, and obviously we've got our sheep scab treatments now as well. On the cattle side, we've had a BVD programme for a long time, and in addition to the compulsory testing through the Scottish Government, we're testing the animals coming in for BVD, and they also get checked for Yonas as well. Having this single port of entry is really beneficial to the Shetland Animal Health Schemes, and the reason for that is quite simple. It's because we have the vets coming in to look at all the animals coming in, all the sheep and cows, and then they can make a note of the tag numbers, so we know all the identities coming in, and that can then go on a database, and we can log the results and help out the farmers with reminders for retests and advice for the vets and so on. So obviously, if you're in a setup on an island that has different points of entry, and people are bringing animals up in their own trailer, for instance, it would be a lot harder. I'm not saying you couldn't do it, but it would need to be in a different way, perhaps based on what was coming onto individual farms rather than what was coming into the island as a whole. Well, the cassette system's made it easier in that it's easier to log what's going on. So, for example, we would get, if there's a shipment coming in, we would get a record of how many animals are coming in, who they're coming in to, and then that would enable us to plan and the vets to arrive and to get the dipping crew organised and so on. So in that way, yeah, it makes it a lot easier having that having animals travelling on the containers rather than up in individual trailers. I mean, we're very fortunate in that we're managing to control a lot of diseases that farmers would have to tackle if they were on the mainland. Yeah, so, and some of the schemes have been in place for a very long time. I mean, we started working on sheep scab way back in the mid-90s and BVD again in the late 90s. But in addition to the schemes that have run for a long time, all the schemes are constantly under review because obviously the disease situation is constantly changing, technology is constantly changing. An example of that would be the way that we've responded to sheep scab. We used to control it with an injectable product coming in. Now as the mites become resistant to that across the country, we've shifted to dipping. Another example would be OPA. We haven't really had capacity to look at OPA in imported sheep coming in for a long time, but we've had a new project this past year which has involved training the vets, getting them equipped, so now that we are much better equipped to pick up OPA if we see that coming in imported sheep. The process, it goes through quite a lot of different steps. If people are buying sheep south or at a mart or privately, they will then book it in through the shipping company. The shipping company then sends a notification which goes to various different parties, but what that means is that everyone's ready when those animals are coming in. We have a vet on site to work with them, and then if it's sheep, the importers will have liaised with the dipping crew and they'll have the dipper ready. So when the animals come in, there'll be a note taken of the tag numbers and what tests need to be done. And then when those results come in, they'll be reported out by the vets. The animals are on a database and any necessary follow-up testing can be arranged in that sort of a way. So that's more or less the order of how things go. We're very, very fortunate to have this scheme in Shetland. It's a really good example of joint working. It's funded partly by the council and partly by the farming community. It's the council working alongside the farmers, crofters, farming organisations, alongside the vets, the college and also the shipping companies. So it really is an example of joint working there. And the advantages that it brings to Shetland is it's obviously a great example, great benefit to the animals and also to the farmers and crofters because they don't have these diseases. So it's a benefit to them on farm, but increasingly it's becoming a benefit to them off the farm in that we're seeing a premium for those animals when they hit the sale ring. And that's really been helped by remote bidding, which started during COVID. Very much most of what we do is run on a voluntary basis. The only exception to that would be the control of sheep scab that we have, which is run through the sheep scab regulations. And we managed to change that this year to incorporate the dipping as a treatment for sheep scab, for sheep coming in, as opposed to using injectable product administered by the vet. And the support for that has been overwhelming. I mean, we ran a voluntary dipping community dipper for a couple of years before we got the bylaw changed, and all the consultations that we had for that introducing of dipping was overwhelmingly positive. So that was just really reassuring that we were on the right track and doing the right thing.
My name is Simon Turner. I'm a Professor of Applied Ethology at Scotland Rural College in the Animal Behaviour and Welfare team. So the research that we did was commissioned by the Scottish Government. It was conducted in 2023 and it was in response to a Farm Animal Welfare Committee suggestion that there was some effort made to look at the animals' responses to transport in the cassette system. The cassette system is quite a unique system, and there hadn't been any research done on it previously to understand how the animals respond to being in those cassettes on the journey down from Orkney or Shetland to Aberdeen. So the cassette system is quite a unique system. I don't think there's anything like it elsewhere in the world. It was designed bespoke for the transport of animals from the Northern Isles. And it is a two-tier system that so animals can go on the top deck or on the bottom deck. There's the facilities to provide food and water to the animals, and it can separate the animals from their slurry. So what we did is we worked with the industry and we followed the animals on 6 accompanied journeys to see how they responded to those journeys. And on each of those journeys we looked at animals in 6 different cassettes, so we could get a sample from across the different parts of the vessel. And we looked at the animals before they were loaded, and we focused particularly on the animals' behavioural responses during the journey itself, and then we looked at the animals on arrival in Aberdeen too. So what we found was firstly some really good good points. The handling of the animals in all of the larages, both on the islands and in Aberdeen, was very good. We did also look at some animal health inspection reports from Aberdeen City Council that they kindly made available to us from a period of about 7 years. And there were very few cases where we could confidently attribute an injury present on arrival in Aberdeen to the journey itself. So that was quite good to see. We were really lucky in this project, whereby it was a very short project. The whole project was only a few months long, and we only had one transport season to actually study the animals. So to a certain extent, we had to choose dates and go for it and hope for the best. But we were very lucky that we managed to sample calm, average, and rougher days, both from Orkney and from Shetland. So that was very helpful. We didn't find any evidence we found very little evidence of injuries that were significant and could be attributed to the journey. So I think for the vast majority of animals, then the impact of the journey on welfare is probably short-lived, rather than there being any long-lived consequences. So our recommendations going forward were to consider monitoring water usage, just to get a better handle on how much water was being consumed, providing more hay, just so they're not experiencing a prolonged period without food, which would be unnatural for a ruminant, and ongoing monitoring of the temperature as well, just to understand what's happening within the cassettes, particularly during the warm days. There is room for improvement, making access to water more attractive, monitoring the temperature and so on. But I think it's fair to say that the system works efficiently, given the challenges that's faced in moving animals from the island. It works well, but there are, like any system, there are opportunities to refine it further, and ongoing monitoring to improve things for the animals.
I'm Cecil Junson. I sit as chair of Shetland Livestock Marketing Group. Shetland Livestock Marketing Group run local abattoir, and they run the local mart. In addition to that, we get involved in other things. The one thing is we provided the dipper for dipping all stock coming into Shetland, because there really wasn't another body. There wasn't any private individual that was wanting to get involved in doing that, and really we were the only probably agricultural body that did it, and so we took the decision to go for that. The council has major involvement with us, have had for a number of years, that all stock is tested and treated arriving at the pier. And the big advantage in Shetland compared to other areas is that we have only one point of stock coming in, and they all travel on the containers. So there's no stock coming in somebody's livestock trailer. It's fairly easy to control that side of it. And since we had the bylaw in place, we then looked at amending the bylaw that it included dipping. The broad agricultural industry, we've had meetings here, I think 100%, and that was fair good numbers of folk being there, 100% of people were totally in support of the idea. We make a charge for dipping stuff coming in, which is extremely high in comparison to somebody dipping a flock of sheep, but the problem is we're only dipping a handful of sheep. We have staff hanging around, so the figure has to be high. But when you think that you're bringing in, most of it's what's coming in is expensive rams or expensive breeding sheep, to add say £30 onto that is a small payment to keep Shetland clear of scab. As far as transport is concerned, as I said, stock's coming in at the one point, and all stock now has been for a number of years. We use what we class as a cassette system. It's a double deck steel container, and the big difference with them, if you compare it to say an Arctic trailer, a normal road Arctic trailer with livestock deck on, the difference with these containers is they're not sprung, they're solid. So when they go onto the boat, they are solid and then they're chained down. so they don't have the bounce that you would see in a road vehicle, which is a big difference in making the sheep settled. It is vitally important, and because we cannot work on it any other way, that the period has to be classed as a rest period. Stock travels to get to the pier, and stock travels from the Aberdeen end to leave, but the section in between on the boat has to be classed as a rest period. Otherwise we wouldn't be able to move them off. Otherwise we would get into ridiculous situations that the boat would almost need to stand still in the water for a period or whatever. But it has to be a rest period. We are certainly of the opinion, because of how the boat travels, because of the containers and how they're fixed down on the basis that they are solid, and because they have water, they have hay, they have space totally acceptable to the vets and so forth. It's laid down in a sense how many can go in the pens, that it's no different than being inside in a shed for the night. In many cases it would probably be looked on as being better, because the point is, and this is one of the main points about these containers, that they have drainage, and they have all the liquids are draining out to a tank underneath. Previous in times gone past, we used to have a stock boat, and these stock boats would come in and take stock away. Now these boats had a concrete floor, so each level in there was a concrete floor, and that's why when stock came off of them, it was very difficult to see a paint mark on them because they were in such a mess. It's likewise if you had any kind of stock on a concrete floor that wasn't bedded, sheep would be black from one end to the other. We would class the rest period and the treatment that they are getting to being as good, if not better, than stock being inside. And and I think that's the message, is that it's very similar to an inside position that happens all the time. Everybody takes stock inside, and this would be classed as very, very similar.